Welcome back. Now, South Africa has seen a flurry of significant political developments in recent days, including the reversal of the VAT increase, the ANC Northern Cape elective conference, and the visit of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to South Africa, among others. Political parties across the spectrum are claiming credit for the VAT decision. Even those that had previously endorsed the budget's fiscal framework have been quick to commend themselves. Now, to unpack these developments, we are joined by political economist and senior research fellow at the Trade Collective, Dr. Lebohang Pheko. Dr. Pheko, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Lots going on, of course, this week as well. What were your reflections as you saw court cases, media briefings, and a lot of credit being given and taken?
Regarding the VAT reversal, of course.
Yes.
Well, that's politics, Masa. I mean, I think everybody. The beautiful baby has many parents. So in this instance, even though we know that the DA and the EFF are the ones that took upon the political action in this regard, the legal action rather, the politicking is a part of the game, isn't it? So, I mean, I think on Twitter, we've seen every single political party in the coalition take credit in some form. And the interesting thing is the way that South Africans at large are responding and reacting to this, and most of them dispensing with some derision at the notion that several political parties are claiming some phallic victory, some pyrrhic victory up over this. And also that one or two of the significant opposition movements were not even in parliament, if we recall, when the budget speech was being debated, and that absence of that particular political party might have actually swung the vote. I think there were 12 or 14 of them that were completely absent. So this is just the nature of the game. And of course, everybody is going into local government elections next year and wants to be seen to be significant, to be effective, and to be viable political players beyond the last year's general elections.
Yeah. And Dr. Pheko, while these are also, political happenings that we can expect as well, they do also have an impact on, of course, our economy. Right now, as it stands, we are told about a 75 billion rand medium-term shortfall that we will incur. Just moving forward in terms of these GNU partners as well and how they relate to one another, how is that going to affect key decisions like the budgets?
It's really hard to tell because the thing with coalition governments and coalition governance, Masa, and the viewers, is that it's a hodgepodge. It's a mixed masala of different political orientations. So you have fairly market-friendly, market-friendly and neoliberal kind of kneeling, such as which I think Rise and Zanzi, Bossa, DA, the Democratic Alliance, and others represent. And then you have kind of center-leftist, social developmental, which the ANC would represent, although they would like to tell us that they're more left-leaning than they actually are. But they're actually, center developmental. And then you have further to the left, traditionally, which would be formations like the PAC, for example, who have always had a more redistributional ethic, a much less market-friendly, much more state-led, statist orientation in their economic policy making. So we're bound to see a whole bunch of wrestling and a whole bunch of compromise as well. And this is what happens, and what I hope doesn't happen in South Africa, which is what has happened in countries across Europe, is that many political formations lose their own identity to the extent where rather than having a left or a right, sort of a red or a blue, it's just shades of purple, shades of lavender, and the extent to which I think voters are also able to then get behind particular political formations is shifting. So you've seen for example, what the Labour Party in the UK now is, which is a centrist at best political party, rather than one that traditionally represented workers' parties and the aspirations of the working class. So I'm really hoping, for the sake of South African voters and for the sake of our own historical legacies and struggles for liberation, for workers, for African people, that this isn't the kind of vagueness, the fluffiness that we begin to descend into. But for now, we have at least 10 parties who are part of this GNU, and all of them want a piece of the pie. And there is no single largest, even though the ANC is 40%, but they're not the majority per se. They're just the single largest formation right now. So that is bound to also change the complexity and the complexion of the way that things like policy votes and public budget votes take place.
And speaking of changing the complexity of things as well, when you speak of this mixed masala of parties that we already have in the GNU, there also have been talks of a reconfiguration. There have been talks about adding more political parties into the GNU. What would that do for what you're talking of now, Dr. Pheko, when you just have this mixed bag?
I think it can only add to the, look, it can do a couple of things, Masa. The one is that it can perhaps bring more talent. I mean, that's always a possibility, bring more ideas. It can bring a generational shift of the way that we do our politics. And I think that's probably one of the things that many people were looking forward to in having a GNU, is that you have a group of parties that don't have the traditional liberation credentials per se, and in so doing also don't have a lot of the liberation baggage. So you don't have the accusations that the DAA is still beset with, that they are largely the residue of the National Party, and of disgruntled, many of the disgruntled white people, frankly, who have joined. You also don't have the ANC with its baggage and its accusations that in many respects it has moved further right than was expected at the time of the 1994 dispensation. So you have a new generation of politicians, some of whom are technocrats, some of whom don't have historical struggle credentials, but also who might resonate better with the new generation. Let's remember that 30 years is a long time. There's an institutional memory that we're losing. The people who remember and sentimental about the Robben Island credentials, the exile credentials, and so on. There's a whole new generation of people who were not even born in 1994 who do not resonate with those party credentials. So it presents all sorts of possibilities of a futures thinking in the way that we do our politics, although also running the risk of losing the historical narrative. But perhaps things must evolve.
Also, what took place this week as well, when we're looking at the world of politics domestically as well, was the ANC's Northern Cape elective conference, where we saw again Zamani Soul being re-elected as chairperson for the third term. What did you make of that elective conference? Also, bearing in mind their performance as a province and a party in the last general elections.
Look, the fact that the top 5 of the provincial officials were all elected unopposed, that's an important display and increasingly a rare display of cohesion in this period of national factionalism and the GNU period, and that does seem to signal quite a useful solidity in the Northern Cape ANC as well. It also might potentially, I think the ANC are advertising this as organizational renewal. I think the banner was incredibly long, something about the year to make the ANC more effective for the people, something along those lines. Not very catchy, but be that as it may, it seems to have been pointing towards that direction. And of course, the delegates were interested in things around economic transformation, social cohesion, communications, and let's not forget that all of this builds up to the 2026 elections, and these are probably seen as a bellwether and as a hopeful indication that the ANC's ongoing, decades-long rhetoric around self-correction and rebuilding, especially after the deep election decline that took place last year, that perhaps they're seeing this as an opportunity to relaunch grassroots mobilization as a launchpad towards 2026. That might be I would say that they should avoid being celebratory, and I think that it's for the public to begin to discern, based on the national performance over the next 12 months, having had the 1-year grace period since the last elections, whether this will take place. And I think certainly this seems to be viewed with great optimism, but I always think that kind of optimism should be tempered. 12 months is a long time towards the elections. Anything can still happen.
And just finally, so just taking a look at our global relations as well, there was that phone call between the President Cyril Ramaphosa and the US President Donald Trump that took place this week as well. And also that Ministers Parkstow, Ronald Lomola and Minister John Steenhuisen have been tasked with these US-SA trade talks as well. What do you make of what's going on there between South Africa and America? Is there a slight shift that's going on? Are you seeing a little bit more fertile ground for these discussions and negotiations?
The ground is always very tricky, especially because the Trump administration is having its own internal um, turmoil, actually. We've seen that there's a kind of the bromance between Trump and our homeboy Elon Musk is certainly frosting over a bit. So it's subject to its own internal turmoil. And I also think that we need to think around a much more South Africa facing outward looking view on this rather than the slightly apologetic, avoid an apologetic posture. I think this is a sign for us to be very clear about what South Africa's international policy and international footprint should be, and also think around and begin to continue to realize that we have what is needed by America and the rest of the world, especially our natural minerals, our resources, and so on, and that we need to be a bit more assertive in that regard, notwithstanding that diplomacy is always a good thing. I mean, the significance, of course, of now bringing John Steenhuisen into the mix is again a nod to the GNU, right? Exactly as I've just spoken about, and especially a nod to the fact that the DA have a quite different approach to the ANC on these things. They're very market friendly. They have been of the view. I think we've seen their pronouncements on a much more appeasing approach to the US that many people may not agree with. I don't personally agree with it, but it is of course a trade-off to potentially reduce further internal political friction, including the kind of friction we've seen around the VAT increase. So we can see internal politics playing themselves out on the international stage as well, and what it means to be a GNU on the international stage rather than just a single party on the international stage.
Interesting times indeed. Really appreciate your insights, Dr. Pheko.